tuned into Masters of the Genre, where I, Cardinal Sin, take you right to the source of the most important genre creators of their generation. Authors, actors, directors, science fiction, fantasy, comics, film, and other creators that shape our genre fiction and entertainment. Get ready to leave the world of the everyday behind and go head to head with the masters of the genre.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to Masters of the Genre number 15 with Mr. Andy Masterson. Now, Andy Masterson started martial arts training in 1985, and 20 years later, his Sifu, or teacher, asked him to take over the studio. He now teaches Kung Fu and Tai Chi, among other things, in his New Jersey studio. Andy started customizing action figures between 15 and 20 years ago, and although Andy has been customizing figures for some time, he rose to prominence when he created for high-profile YouTubers like myself. Welcome to Masters of the Genre, Andy Masterson.
Hello, thanks for having me, Gil.
It's wonderful to have you. I can't believe that we haven't had you on the show before, but you are definitely a master of the genre in your own way. And just to kind of get a little bit of history, I suppose, out of the way, how did you get into making your own action figures like this wonderful interdimensional guardian figure?
It started with parenthood. My son was born in '99, and I started immediately collecting for him action figures. We were going through KB Toys and saw this Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1 action figure on clearance, a 12-inch Hasbro figure, and I picked it up for him and started putting them away. And when he got to be about 4 years old or so, 4 or 5 years old, I had introduced him to Star Wars, and then introduced him to the action figure collection. I started going on forums to find out when the next releases of the Hasbro figures would come in, so I wouldn't miss any. And on a few of the forum sites, there were sections devoted to customizing figures, and I discovered the idea of sculpting and casting them, so you have a purely customizable and individualized action figure. So I took an Anakin Skywalker figure, popped the head off, sculpted one that looked like my son, and he had his very own Star Wars action figure to play with his Obi-Wan figure and go on adventures with. Then when my daughter got a little bit older, she wanted her own figure, so she got Jedi Aaron to go along with his. And over time, I kept working on them and making some for friends and family. And it's been a hobby ever since. It's been one of those things where sometimes you would see something and it might be out of your price range. Sometimes you would see gaps in your collecting where they would have certain figures from a franchise but skip a pivotal character. So your options were to do without it, or I've always been the kind of person, if I couldn't find it, I would just make it myself. And it's gone from there. I've rarely found anything that I haven't been able to at least attempt on my own. Sometimes they don't come out so well, but you try again and you do your best to keep improving until you find something that's acceptable to you, because it's your collection.
Absolutely. And I wanted to let folks know, just kind of from the get-go here, that tonight's giveaway is, hail Gary Ambrosia, good to see you here, is going to be a Masters of the Genre t-shirt. So if you win, make sure you email me at gil@sunflower.com, and I'll need to know, obviously, your gender, or how you identify, I suppose, your shirt size, and your mailing address. So I'll repeat that later on. Just wanted to make sure that folks knew, yes, there is a giveaway, and yes, we will be doing that a little bit later on. Now, in addition to the kind of figures that you were talking about, there are other scales of figures. I think the ones that people are the most familiar with are the 1/6 scale, basically like a 6-inch tall character, or a 6-foot tall character would be 12 inches high. Can you tell us more about the different range of figures that you're familiar with?
Yeah, so these kind of started with Barbie. The creation of Barbie was like they found this little toy fashion doll in France, and I think it was the guy who started Mattel, and he brought it home, or I think it was actually his wife, and to give it to her daughter. And Hasbro came up with the idea to compete with Mattel. They made the G.I. Joe figure for boys, and that was your basic 12-inch action figure. Of course, like, you don't call them dolls when you're giving them to little boys, because boys don't want to play with dolls.
Sure.
And the main thing is, like, when you're talking about an action figure, it has posability, it has things it can do. Like, so Barbie is kind of limited to very small range of motion, where your G.I. Joe action figures would have probably about 14, 15 points of articulation, where you could really shape the position of the arms, legs, crouching positions, fighting positions. Whereas Barbie was just basically to show off outfits and, have tea with the girls.
She was a fashion plate. Yeah.
Right. And then you had no limit to the different sizes. And there was, in the early days, there was not a lot of uniformity. For example, you had Mego, who copied the G.I. Joe model, because G.I. Joe used to come with, you could buy one figure, and then you could buy accessory packs that could go along with it. So you could buy base G.I. Joe body, and then you could pick up the scuba gear adventure with the octopus. You could pick up the space adventure with the space suit. And Mego came along, and they made an 8-inch version. They called Action Jackson, and very posable, interchangeable outfits, fabric outfits. And it was better in a way, because at a 12-inch scale, when you started making accessories for these things, they were gigantic. And they were, back then in the 70s, were kind of expensive. Not that really that's changed. When you went down in scale, the accessories you could come up with they would fit more in a bedroom and such like that. So then when the modern age came along with the Star Wars figures, when the first ones of those came out, I believe the owner of Kenner set his coffee cup on the desk and said, "I want them this tall." So that is how you got your 1/18 scale, the 3 3/4-inch figures that are so popular with the kids, because you could make ships, and you could make cars and things like that you could actually interact with the figures. The 1/6 scale is sort of in modern times, it's sort of a Cadillac. Back when I first got into doing this, you had Hasbro that was making Star Wars figures and G.I. Joe figures.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also had a company that started out as basically a garage company. where they would make custom garage kit figures of different licenses and things. It was completely unlicensed, and that became Sideshow Collectibles. And as they grew, they got actual licensing. They made official products, and back in, I think, 2005, they subcontracted out to the Hasbro, because Hasbro was losing money on their 6-scale figures. Their last few releases were really good. They moved away from the big chunky toy-like hands, and they got into like a more human-looking hand that would actually had some posability to it. And but they were losing money on it. They just weren't selling enough because only collectors were buying them. And Sideshow came along, and they subcontracted the license from Hasbro, and they made their first Luke Skywalker figure. Now, Sideshow did an excellent job at the time. They quickly became one of the industry leaders, and a few years later, they sort of got eclipsed by Hot Toys. And as of now, Hot Toys is pretty much the undisputed champion of the 1/6 scale world. The things that they make are just absolutely breathtaking with the detail. Like, here is their Qui-Gon figure.
Wow.
Yeah, you can look at this guy. Like, there's actually pores in the skin.
Yeah,
and the paint job is
it's a very good likeness.
Yeah, it's remarkable how well they do things. Now, Sideshow, in contrast, I have an Episode 2 Obi-Wan, which it looks good.
It is.
But when you compare it to the Sideshow figure, the Hot Toys figure, it really, you can see how it's, a generation behind.
Right.
Now, the body types, the Sideshow had this basic body. They called it the Art S. Buck figure.
Can you repeat?
Art S. Buck. If you ever seen
Art S. Buck.
Yeah, it's a play on words. The little wooden models you may have seen of humanoid figures that they give artists to.
Like the artists, yeah.
Yes, it's called an artist buck. And so when...
Oh, so you're saying like a generic body type?
Yes, it's going to an artist's buck. So when Sideshow made their body, they called it Art S. Buck. So
I see.
Little play on words. So it's not bad, and it's better than the Hasbro bodies, but it's a little lanky, and it didn't have the posability to make a very natural looking replica of, like, that looked very lifelike. It looked kind of stiff and mannequin like. But it was great because it was the first time you got like a really high-end version of Star Wars figures. And of course, for the longest time, they were dominating the market until Hot Toys threw their hat in the ring. And
now let me interrupt briefly. I'm pretty sure this is either Sideshow or Hot Toys, this Peter Venkman here. And then if you're a Doctor Who fan, you'll recognize Sutekh from the Tom Baker episode, The Pyramids of Mars. Then we have the David Tennant Doctor. And then we have a kind of hard to see, maybe I'll put him over here, another figure of the Matt Smith Doctor. So is there, can you sort of tell which ones these are and what scales they are?
Well, let's see. I'm going to say that the Doctor Who figures are probably 1/12 scale. They're probably about 6 inches.
So by that, do you mean this one or this one?
The one yes, that one.
Okay.
Now the Ghostbusters, Sideshow Sideshow carries a lot of product made by other companies. Like they are the distributor for Hot Toys in North America. You can get them other places, but they're like the official supplier.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the Doctor Who and the Ghostbusters are made by Eagle Moss. So,
Yes.
which they have like a great reputation for detail, especially with their ships.
And do they work with Sideshow as well?
Sideshow is kind of like a dealer. They used to do primarily their own products, and they still do a lot. They don't do a whole lot of the 6-scale figures anymore. They've really branched out. They do a lot of statues. They do a lot of framed artwork, all kinds of different collectible formats. They really, in years past, they've done some remarkable statues. A guy I know used to be a sculptor for them, and he was just like amazing. From the time he was 16 years old, he was working as a professional sculptor for them.
There's been some scuttlebutt on YouTube about you've missed your calling and you should be sculpting for them.
I'm not quite that good, but I appreciate the vote of confidence. I hope to get there at some point.
So this little one here, and I have lots of these scale. What scale is this Doctor Who figure right here?
That looks like it's about 1/18 scale. It should be about like 3 3/4 inches.
Okay.
And that's like your typical, like the old G.I. Joe figures and Star Wars figures.
Right.
But
yeah, I used to have a lot of Star Wars figures and the Darth Vader head carrying case.
Yeah.
I don't remember what happened to them, but I don't have them anymore.
Well, there's a lot of difference here, differing opinions. Basically, anything can be a collectible. You will run into collectible snobs who think that if you don't have say they don't accept anything that's other than 6 scale as a collectible, which is ridiculous. A collectible is anything that you like.
Right.
And I go by the philosophy that if somebody comes over my house and they don't think my collection is up to snuff, I can escort them out of my house and they can go find something else to look at.
Right.
It's there for me. It's not there for them. So
it wasn't made for them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole point. Your shelf is yours. Your shelf can represent the universe you want it to represent. We watch YouTube, and YouTube has become our venting place for
like on Pop Culture Breakdown and
right. You see our frustration when they've defiled these beloved franchises that we've grown up with and have been such great parts of our lives.
You're preaching to the choir, brother.
So you can take your shelf, and anybody who's collected comic books understands this. Like, there are always, not to the extent it is now in modern comics where they completely destroy things, but there are storylines that you just ignore because they stink. It's like I remember when they had Captain America do that, and you just pretend like it never happened, and you go and you read the stories that you liked. Well, the same thing is pretty much what happens on your collecting shelf. And my purpose of when I started doing these is just to give somebody something to be happy about. Give them something they can look at and they can really appreciate. There's too much going on there that is depressing, and you can have something and you can have it in your own space that represents the way that you like a figure. I have a really good friend of mine who he's a fan. I've always been more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan.
I have too.
But my friend Fred is a huge DC fan, and my friend Kat's a huge DC fan. Well, I was talking with my friend Fred about, as a DC collector, it's a really cool time because you have so many different options. Like if I were a DC collector and I wanted, say, Justice League on my shelf, I would probably go for a Christopher Reeve Superman, and I would put a Ben Affleck Batman, a Gal Gadot Wonder Woman. There is a third-party toy line called So-So Toys, and third-party basically means unlicensed. They're basically making figures without a license, and it seems kind of shady. But in reality, it's actually a benefit to the entire market because if Hot Toys were to make one of these figures, they would be very expensive. It wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee on how many they would sell. And so chances of Hot Toys actually making one are pretty slim.
So I recall you earlier saying something about, I don't mean earlier today, in a previous conversation that we had, that you mentioned that, let's say a factory in China might run off 1,000 or 2,000 figures of X, and then they would make another run while they had that mold for themselves or for a third-party company. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
No, that's a little bit different. That's just blatant counterfeiting,
okay.
Which still kind of benefits the collector because let's face it, there's when you go and pick up a Hot Toys figure, you're talking about spending about $270 on each figure, and that's before shipping. So now they're worth it. They're truly amazing looking figures, but for most people, the cost is rather prohibitive to flesh out an entire collection with those high-end figures. But you have.
So is this an example of what you might be talking about, like
that is
Vampirella?
Yeah. Now I don't know if that has the license, or the license may even actually gone into public domain. So, but they can.
Well, if you can see the box right there.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't get there.
Well,
so it looks pretty legit in any case.
Well, for example, here's a third-party Winter Soldier figure. Okay, and it's basically
Bucky.
Basically a clone of the Bucky figure. Okay, so this is kind of like just basically a counterfeit figure. Now, there are other figures out there. Here is a Season 3 Daredevil figure. Now, this is made by So-So Toys, and it's this is third party. It's unlicensed. I believe the name on the box is Blind Vigilante. So they don't actually call him Daredevil, but clearly it's a Daredevil figure with a Matt Murdock or a Charlie Cox license.
Right.
We also have a third-party Jessica Jones figure. Now, these are all unique sculpts. They are not copied from an existing Hot Toys sculpt, and
I see.
They're made by they're basically figures that Hot Toys is unlikely to make. Now,
those Hot Toys figures, a lot of them are like hand painted, right?
They are. It's sort of a combination of like an automated process and some touching up with some pretty talented painters, but they have examples to go off of. So they have
like my Tom Baker here.
Yeah,
I believe is hand painted.
Right. And I have a friend of mine who he's actually contracted out quite frequently to paint prototypes for the large companies, for like NECA and for Sideshow. They will send him their prototype figures, and he'll do a custom paint job on them, and they'll use that custom paint job to have the figure painters in China emulate them.
I see.
And they'll send those prototypes to the exhibition shows, like the comic book convention. So when you see these things out in display before the release, my friend Nathan will quite often have painted. And this guy, he does breathtaking work. Like you look at the, you got to figure these heads are about 1.5 inches high. And when you look at these things, they're indistinguishable from an actual portrait if you look at them on screen. It's remarkable. He'll put detail on these things where like you can actually see the lines inside the pupil in the eye, which is insane that he can get that level of detail. But now it'll cost you about $200 plus to get a head custom painted by him, and it'll probably take you about a year. But once you have it, it's a museum piece. It's a work of art.
Right.
So,
but, and I think this is maybe a good place to make that division line. What we're going to be talking about tonight is how you can make your own, not only action figures, but dioramas, you know, like you've got behind you. You can make your own shelf space, and also earlier we were talking about different companies that make basically shelving units for diorama displays, and that they're made from a variety of materials like wood, metal, clay, or plastic to create an environment for you to display your figure in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the most common thing that most collectors use are detolf shelving units by IKEA. They're cheap and they're easy to put together. The shelving spaces have a 15-inch by 15-inch cube that you can work figures into, and it also works nice for putting small diorama bases there. Like most of your figures will come with like just a generic base. Sometimes they'll be a little customized, like for example, the Star Wars base for the Qui-Gon figure is just like that. It's got a little design on it. Kind of looks like the power area there on Naboo where he had to fight with Darth Maul.
Oh, right.
So, and sometimes they'll put these things together so you can have like they can almost join up, and you can place them, and they'll actually kind of clip together and make a display. But my opinion, there are statues that you can do. Statues are an area that some people like. The argument that I've heard for statues are that they tend to be less toy-like, and so people aren't quite as embarrassed to have them in their living room when people walk in, because it's a statue. It might be a Captain America representation, but it's a statue, so it's a work of art, right?
Right.
Whereas you're putting up toys on a shelf, and people look at you like, oh, and they roll your eyes, which again, I tell them to leave. But
right.
I find that when you set up a diorama base and on a shelf, it really makes it pop. It brings it to life. And the advantage to these figures, I mean, some of these have like 30 some points of articulation on them, and you can put them into positions that are very, very human looking, and it really makes a customizable display. And that's really what I'm trying to get people to realize, is to tap into their own innate creativity, to make something that is explicitly your own, that you have the ability and the power to make something it's all you. It's all how you feel and how you want it to be. And
it's not that hard.
Yeah, and it can be affordable. Like here's a Peggy Carter figure.
Peggy Carter.
It's a pretty good sculpt. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's a good representation. And so if you have like your World War II era Captain America, which I do, this can go on the shelf. This was about $130. Now, a lot of these companies will come with payment plans. There are groups on Facebook that you can get into where they offer a reduced price on pre-orders
Mm-hmm.
if you're part of that community. So you might be able to save $10 or $20 on a figure if you pre-order it early and get an order in. A Hot Toys figure, you'll pre-order it and you probably won't get it for a year as they're accumulating their run size that they're going to do. But I will make my shelf a mixture of official releases and third party and customized figures. Now, as a big Marvel fan, I wanted an actual ancient one on my shelf.
Right.
Not
That wasn't Tilda Swinton.
Right. So I found this this head sculpt on eBay because there's a whole section of unpainted 6-scale heads that someone sculpted for a company, and again the black market stepped in and started selling the unpainted heads. So I picked up this guy, I added a goatee to him, and he became my Ancient One figure. His hands are actually sideshow zombie hands, but they look kind of old, so right. I figured it worked. But I want to set my shelf up to represent the version of Marvel Comics that I liked. Chris Evans did a pretty good job as Captain America. Maybe not the definitive version as far as the comic book goes, but he did a very good representation of him. So I have no problem with keeping
and as far as the MCU goes, it's kind of like Captain America was the heart and soul of the Avengers.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and it was I have a third-party Iron Man figure because I was like, at the time I was like, I really can't afford to just go and lay down $300 and some dollars.
I was looking at the stealth Iron Man yesterday, and it was $465, and I just about choked.
Yeah, well, that's all die-cast metal.
Yeah,
so it's really a work.
But it had all these, photos, just like you said, of the different points of articulation you can move the figure into.
Yeah, they really are remarkable, and that it also comes with LED lighting, so that that's another that adds to the value of it basically. But it's not necessary for you to like I got this. This was basically a kit. You could buy the head and the body. I think I picked this up for about $80. The head and the outfit rather, for the Scarlet Witch figure.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was figuring I like the character, but I don't know that I like the character $270 worth.
Right.
But I do like the character for about $100 because I had to pick up a body for it, and now I have a Scarlet Witch figure,
which you sort of cobbled together yourself, right?
Yeah, well that's basically a kit. They sell you the head, the body, and the hands and the boots, and you just get a body for it and throw it together. Which brings us to like the kit bashing idea. Now,
before we get into the kit bashing idea, I wanted to ask you a question. As an example, when you see the huge ships in Star Wars, the original movie, and in Alien, where they've obviously raided a model shop and they put stuff all over the ships, is that what you mean by kit bashing?
Sort of. When you're talking about action figures, kit bashing is basically you take a piece of this and a piece of this, and you can put it together. For example, my Punisher figure. I really liked the John Bernthal version of the Punisher. And before they put out an actual release of it, I had made my own because there was a John Bernthal head from Walking Dead.
Nice.
And I replaced it with an actual Punisher head when they released that one. But he's got a BDU pants, he's got like combat boots on, and a military sweater, and I made the flak vest with the logo on the Punisher skull. So that's sort of like an example of a kit bash. I took a generic body, a black market head, random clothing that I picked up just on eBay, and put it all together. And there's a kit bash that it's.
Did it come with the gun?
No, I picked the gun up separately. There's so many things on eBay. This is such a great time.
And because that's a 6 scale, right?
Yes, yeah, this is
Because that's
and
a 6 scale. All the accessories and stuff are sort of universal, right?
correct. And one of the nice things about it is, like, here we have, you know, convicted Ezra Miller, orange flesh. Okay, but you can see how, like, the Punisher figure is taller
Right.
because you can get bodies of various sizes that can reflect, like, the different heights of a different actor. The Robert Downey Jr. is shorter, so the body you could get a smaller body for him, and so forth.
Right.
But it's such a great time to get into the hobby because you can really get some good quality at a fraction of the price. Yet, if there's a figure or a character who is your favorite, who you find is that's your particular hero, by all means, spend the extra money, get on a payment plan for on Sideshow for a Hot Toys figure, pay it off, and when you
Now,
get it,
one thing I'd like to interject just real quickly. I've heard both Robert Meyer Burnett and Az from Heels versus Babyface talk about how they put down, their deposit and made regular monthly payments, and then they got refunded because they decided not to make the figure after all.
yes, sometimes that does happen. Hot Toys has released a lot of prototypes that they never followed through on because the sales didn't necessarily meet the
Didn't
projections.
justify the, yeah.
Right. For example, Howard Chan, who's the president of Hot Toys, has stated that they will never make another sequel trilogy Star Wars action figure because they sold so poorly.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. It's like when it's one thing for them to lose, like, ticket sales and things like that. But when you get nerds like me who have spent lots and lots of money traditionally on their merchandise, and now I don't want to. For example, like there's they've announced that Namor is going to be in
Wakanda Forever. Mm-hmm.
But he's going to be a Mexican Namor.
Yeah, without wings.
I don't want a Mexican Namor. I want Prince Namor from the comic books. I want a good representation of the guy that can pass for the guy in the comic book.
And he shouldn't be a villain.
Well, I mean, he's an anti-hero. He's for his people, right? So it's like, and when his people were getting bombed with depth charges, he kind of got irritated. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want a figure that's going to represent the comic book version. I don't want necessarily the Mexican Namor figure. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want a Tom Cruise Blade figure as well. I have Wesley Snipes for Blade. Now, Wesley Snipes is not actually the best casting choice for an actual Blade because Blade was British. Blade was born in a London hospital, and his mother was a prostitute in London who was attacked by a vampire.
Who would you have cast other than Wesley Snipes?
Well, in current day, it would have been Idris Elba would have been great for it.
Except he's not a martial artist, right?
Well, none of these guys are really martial artists. I mean, the most
Wesley Snipes is a real life martial artist.
Correct, but Wesley Snipes is now 60 years old. He's not going to be playing Blade either.
No.
Mahershala Ali isn't a martial artist, and he's going to be playing Blade. So, and in the comic book, Blade was going around with a wooden bokken, wooden samurai sword that he would stab vampires with and kill them that way.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great idea.
Well, there was that was all from Tomb of Dracula, which, Marvel
I read Tomb of Dracula. I can't believe I never ran across Blade in the comics.
Yeah, he was traditionally drawn by Gene Colan, who had a very macabre style to him. But yeah, I want a representation on my shelf of the hero that is representative of what they were portrayed at on either the screen or on the page. In the comics, I want sort of a balance. I want a blend. I think that like the tactical suit for Captain America works really well for a figure like that. For Superman and Spider-Man, Spider-Man should have. Move my mic here. There's Spider-Man stuck to the wall, and there's Stan Lee above him. But Spider-Man should have a Spider-Man outfit. You know, he's somebody who, you know, he's got all these abilities and he can dodge bullets and stuff. Yeah, by all means, put on the flashy outfit. You have Superman. You're Superman. You can wear your underwear on the outside. I don't care. Now, a lot of times these things, when you mix them together with realistic looking figures, they look kind of cheesy. They don't necessarily translate well. So sometimes there's an artistic license that's taken, and sometimes their laziness in not even attempting to make a costume is kind of stupid.
Right.
So the MCU has done a pretty good balance overall. It would be nice if like we could see like, you know, costumes for everybody, but I get why, you know, they're trying to make it sort of like a little bit realistic. And now DC, on the other hand, did a great job with making some of their figures. Now, Susu Toys, like to go back to what I was saying earlier, they made versions of Robin and Nightwing from the Titan series. Now, everybody I've talked to doesn't necessarily appreciate the series very much. They don't like that very much, but the figures and the costumes on the show look really good. So, which would look great on a shelf. So you could come along to somebody's house. They've got Christopher Reeve Superman. They've got Ben Affleck Batman, Gal Gadot Wonder Woman, and Dick Grayson from the Titan show. But guess what? They're all DC Comics. And if that's the version you like, now there are some people out there that say, no, I've got a little OCD. I've got to put the Snyderverse here. I've got to have my Michael Keaton Batman, or I've got a friend of mine who's got an entire collection of the 1966 Batman. So he's got custom figures of Penguin, Joker, and he made his own custom figure of King Tut. He's got a.
Did you say King Tut?
Yes.
Huh.
He was an obscure villain who, like, you know, looked kind of like a beatnik, you know, but he was King Tut. And he's got the Riddler. He's got Gorson's Riddler on there. But he likes that setup. And that's where it comes down to, is like, you can set up your shelf the way you want it. And that's really what it comes down to, is like, I want to encourage people to attempt some things. I've heard from people all the time, I don't have any artistic ability. You don't need a whole lot of artistic ability. And you know what? So what? If you get messed up, try again. You
can tap into that inner creativity even if you don't think you have it. Everybody has some creativity.
Well, that's where things like kit bashing come from. I have a friend of mine who he was looking at my Hawkeye figure, and he was like, "Oh wow, I love Hawkeye. He's always been my favorite character." And he's like, "I don't know if I want to spend that much on it. My wife would kill me." I've sort of gotten him addicted to this a little bit, so we're well past that point.
Maybe his wife will kill you too.
That's a possibility. But I showed him that, like, buy the Jeremy Renner head like several times.
Put together your own Hawkeye.
Exactly, for a fraction of the price. So you could very easily have, like, I've got a bunch of Captain America figures. I've bought the official version of Falcon. I have an official Spider-Man, official Captain America. But the rest are a combination of third parties and kit bashes. Like, I'm not necessarily a Hawkeye super fan, so I don't want to spend $270 on a Hawkeye figure.
That looks exactly like Jeremy Renner.
Right, especially since he doesn't look like, you know, he did in the comic book.
Right.
I would much rather have, like, you know, which I made
You're
my own
purist
version of. Like, well, it's a blend. It's like, if I like the way they did it, I'll take that one. Because,
right.
Again, it's only my taste on the shelf. But there are people out there that want an exact version. And there are companies out there, like, and I'm talking companies like individual creators there are a number of customizers that are on Facebook that I follow, which is the only reason I have a Facebook account, is so I can follow these toy companies.
Right.
But they actually sew together authentic looking, comic book accurate costumes, and they are frighteningly high quality. Now they're expensive; they're like 300 and some dollars for the for just the outfit. But I've seen people spend in excess of $2,000 for a custom figure that they want.
Wow.
Yeah, you get people that really want something, and they will send it out to be custom painted with custom rooted hair, with metal weapons for swords and shields and things. Um, but if that's your thing, if that's like your
Your
hobby, your
hobby and you can
pastime,
afford it.
exactly, then more power to you. Like I'm not going to judge people by what they what they collect. That's
Well, for example, Andy, one of my favorite characters, or I guess in this case artists, is Bernie Wrightson,
mhm.
and I wanted to share the Cycle of the Werewolf figure that's available. I just found this while we were
Yeah,
talking, and it really captures that Bernie Wrightson look,
right. Yeah.
And can you read the name of the company down here?
Let's see here.
Soda, SOTA.
Oh, okay, yeah. Um, I've never heard of them, but like I said, this is such a great time to get into this hobby because there are so many companies coming out there that have really good figures.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Hot Toys that's sort of like they're the preeminent ones, but you also have Asmus that have made spectacular. Well, they've made a combination. They've made spectacular Lord of the Rings figures, and they've made some Lord of the Rings figures. Some of the paint applications can be a little sloppy. Some of the likenesses can be a little off. But they made a Gandalf figure with rooted hair that is absolutely stunning. It looks exactly like Ian McKellen as Gandalf. You have Star Ace Toys that made a very large and expansive line of the Harry Potter series. Um, and they do a great job. And they're significantly cheaper than Hot Toys. So you're talking probably, well, when I say significantly cheaper, you're probably going to be spending about $200 for a figure, anywhere between $180 to $200 instead of like the 270 to, upwards to like $300 for a Hot Toys figure. But again, it's your shelf. And some people will be perfectly happy with, like, if I'm a Qui-Gon fan and all I want is a Qui-Gon figure. When I started collecting because there was a transition there, I started collecting for my son, and then it turned into my collection for Sideshow Star Wars figures. But seeing how huge the line was going to be, I realized very quickly that I didn't have the space, nor could I justify the expense of a full line of Star Wars figures. So I decided to limit myself to Jedi and Sith figures. And occasionally, if there was something else that would come along, like my son really liked the Stormtroopers, the Clone Troopers, so I got him a couple Clone Troopers to go for his shelf of a high end to go along with his custom action figure of him that was dressed in a Jedi outfit, so he could pal around with Obi-Wan. But there's a lot of when Hot Toys got the license, I said to myself, like, you know what? I really can't justify replacing all of my Sideshow figures because I won't get the resale value on a Sideshow figure. But if you have a Hot Toys figure and you've got all the original items and packing materials,
Mm-hmm.
it will appreciate in value and never depreciate in value. I've never seen, like, if you go on an eBay search right now for a Hot Toys figure that was released 3 years ago, you're not going to be able to touch it for anywhere near the original retail price. You're talking at least probably $150 to $100 over the original market price for it. And it's actually probably a good investment to buy these things, put them away for a couple of years, and then try to resell them, provided like Disney doesn't destroy the franchise. Um, but there's always going to be people that want that representation on their shelf. So you're not going to get hurt with that. But I couldn't see doing the replacement for all of these different figures, and it's unlikely that Hot Toys is going to make a Kit Fisto or a Plo Koon Jedi figure. So it behooves me to keep my sideshow figures, and you can always swap out the bodies for one that's a little bit more posable, a little bit more realistic looking, and which I've done with several of them.
Yeah, I was just taking a look, and again, some of these are like choking me.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit for a Spider-Man action figure.
Yeah, that's the one I have right here. But everything that comes inside the box is pretty impressive. He's got like 10 different hands. He's got faux web that comes out of it. You know, now there's an example of a cloned version of Hot Toys Obi-Wan Kenobi figure.
So this would be maybe what we were talking about before about
right.
In a factory they would make another run just for themselves.
Exactly, yeah. And which again, like, you know, you can pick that up there. There's, you know, Christopher Reeve Superman. That was I believe that was originally a Hot Toys sculpt. So you could put together like, and this is good too, because like if you missed out on that figure, say you get into collecting late, and it's been years since they've put out a Christopher Reeve Superman,
right?
But you really want it. Well, you can go on there and you can buy the head, you can buy a body, and you could hire one of these companies that makes the outfits to make a Christopher Reeve Superman outfit for you. Now there will be people that come along and say, "Oh, that's not an official release." Again, throw them out of your house.
Right. Get the fuck out.
As long as it's good to you, who cares?
Right. And that's kind of the whole point of tonight's show is DIY, right?
Exactly. And I want people to understand that you have more creativity than you know. These things aren't particularly difficult, and there are so many YouTube channels out there with tutorials that can show you how to do all this stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can, like, I mean, I put things out there about, like, you know, how to do certain things, and you know, diorama bases. Like here, for example, I picked up Sideshow's Frankenstein figure, and there's an iconic picture of Frankenstein standing in the doorway of the castle.
Mm-hmm.
So I built this. So
wow,
this is all
here. Let me make you big so that we can see that better.
This is made of styrene plastic, you know, the same kind of model, the same kind of plastic material that they make all of your plastic models out of.
Mm-hmm. Is there any way you can get that over the microphone so we can get a better look at it? Look at that detail.
Okay. So I took pieces of styrene, I cut them into square shapes, and took my Dremel and proceeded to kind of carve them into rock shapes. Now, what I did was I actually took a screenshot of the actual doorway, and I made each brick match exactly like it was on the screenshot. So that's an exact replica of the 1932 set from Spider-Man, from Frankenstein rather. So that's sort of like the customizing thing you can do. But you can make things like doorways. I have my friend Tom, who I got into doing this, like started with the Hawkeye figure. Now he's made, he's got a Resident Evil collection. So he's made an entire diorama that sits in his garage of the Resident Evil Raccoon City Police Station. That's right from the game. He's done an amazing diorama base of Final Fantasy VII. Wow. There's this Seventh Heaven bar that's inside there. and he's made an exact replica of this thing, and he's actually selling them.
Ari has a question from the chat. Andy, is that an old school Shang-Chi behind you next to Blade?
This is my custom Shang-Chi. Okay. Now,
this is the one who's the son of Fu Manchu, right?
Right. He was based on Bruce Lee. So I took a Bruce Lee head sculpt, I popped it on the body, and I made his comic book outfit to go along with him. Because, the version they put on screen, again, that's not the version I want on my shelf.
It's not comic book accurate.
Right. And, and the fact that they've gone to such lengths to deviate so much from the real source material that's what bothered me, and that's why I wanted to. When I get something, I want to change it up a little bit, like the and there's so many of these things that are available, and what's really good about it, yes, there are people out there that only make their own figures and all they do is buy the individual heads and so forth, but for most people that do this, they're sort of like additions to an already existing collection. It's like if you missed out on a figure before you could pre-order it, you can buy these parts and you can put it together yourself. You can have some version of it. There are companies out there or I shouldn't say companies, but there are customizers out there that do limited runs of things.
Isn't there a father and son team that does stuff like that?
Yeah, Jazz Inc. over in the Netherlands, I believe, and these guys are amazing. They actually get people sending them the actual blueprints to the actual props that were made on the set, so they can get them even more accurate. Because a lot of these people that worked on the show, on the movies, they want an accurate and complete replication of that movie set. So when they have their Star Wars Millennium Falcon cockpit, it's completely accurate. When you
is this the one of which you speak?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's Jazz Inc. And they do a lot of different things. It's just a father and son team. I would imagine they send things out to get manufactured for them because they use a lot of laser cut aluminum and acrylic.
Wow.
And you assemble these things yourself. And they come with LED lights that you put in there, and it's got like a mapping diagram that how to put the lights in and how to install the lights, which is remarkable.
That's cool.
But, yeah. Now, keep in mind when you buy one of these, like make sure you've got the room for it, because the last thing you want to do is because some of these things are like $2,500.
Yeah.
For some of these display pieces. Now, it's worth it if you're a serious collector and you want that. Like, I mean, you're not going to top that display. You're going to have
that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, you're going to be. People are going to be slack-jawed staring at your display. But this is the thing that, like, if it's going to be an appeal to you, like originally, I had my figures just sitting on shelves, and I thought it was boring. So I'm like, you know what? And I started building this whole diorama behind me because I wanted some action in there, like. And eventually what I'm going to be doing is like I'm going to be creating some Hydra agents from the comic books. So my superhero team is going to be beating up Hydra agents on the street. I've got the bus crashing through the wall. I've got lighting behind everything now. So it's coming along. But it's not hard. What I did was I took some MDF and a jigsaw, and I basically made walls and took little wooden basswood strips at 3/16 of an inch, cut them 1.5 inches, spray painted them brick colored with a brick colored primer, and marked off the walls and individually glued on all these bricks to this wood. Now I could do it a lot faster if I would make a mold and a cast and make brick wall segments that I could put together, which, my good friend Gary Ambrosia has been helping me out with retooling my methods of molding and casting. So that's come a long way. So doing all this kind of these kinds of things, you can do this. You could make a like an alley scene. You could make, and it could be, you could take, there's a thing that people do where they go to Home Depot and they pick up tile grout and they mix it with paint and they paint that on a wall, and now you've got like a stucco finish that looks like, or a concrete wall that you're walking by. You can make these things and set up, like, say you're doing like a Walking Dead theme, and you can have your characters, with their shotguns aimed at the back of an alley, and you can put these things together. And like I said, there's so many things that you can do where you can find tutorials on YouTube about how to make pretty much anything, and it doesn't take a whole lot of talent. You brush things on, you paint it, you learn how to do some basic weathering techniques with some of your paint, and it goes such a long way. There are things you can buy. eBay is a treasure trove of relatively inexpensive accessories that you can pick up. God, there's like Sideshow Collectibles put out a line of zombie figures, and one of their zombie figures was this guy.
I hope one of them was Tom Savini.
There's probably a head sculpt out there for him. So this guy is their Street Prophet figure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he's basically homeless, and he got bit by a zombie, and now he's like, the end is near. Well,
or in an alternate universe, it could be Rorschach. Yep. Rorschach after he got bit.
So there's actually a shopping cart, a 6-scale shopping cart on eBay, and guys would pick up the shopping cart, fill it with junk, and they would have their Street Prophet figure walking around with his shopping cart as he shambles through the street.
Nice.
So there's all kinds of things that you can get that can flesh out these things. And then it's just a matter of your creativity about how you arrange it, and you can move things around and you can put things up. But that's really you can get a blank body. Like this is a clone of a Hot Toys True Type body.
Mm-hmm.
It's $16, $16 or $17. So you get.
And this is sort of what you were talking before about the Art S model.
Well, actually, the Art S Buck figure is a lot less posable. Okay,
right.
So for example,
but this is the action figure version, sort of.
Yes, yeah. This is now this is a Hot Toys. Now, if you see here,
this is like 32 points of articulation.
Correct. Now here is a Hot Toys or a Sideshow body. Reach it.
Well, you could make one, Ari, I suppose. Yeah. Depends on the scale.
Okay, so here is a Sideshow body. Okay. Now, he's limited. Goes to here. The body, like the shoulder, can only move to about here like this. And it doesn't look natural the way it moves.
Right.
Now, if you can see the shoulder joint, it's just basically a ball connected here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you look at this one,
wow. I think we lost your audio, Andy.
I banged my mic, sorry. Okay, so you have a double elbow. Okay, so this one here, like this goes like this. So it can only bend that far. But this can go all the way like that.
Wow.
Same thing with the knee.
That's a big difference.
So these things can be, you could pop them in this position here. You know, he's in the fetal position because he just got scared and lost his head. But the ankles, like the toes can bend.
Wow.
A lot of the common shoes that they get actually you can get two styles, like the hollow, where you actually have to kind of heat it up and put it in, or you also have ones that you just pop the shoe off, and there's a hole in there where you put the foot peg in. It's a rounded peg and it holds it in there, and so the shoe is sort of like this here. See, this is actually, there's a peg in there in the ankle, so the shoe is actually the foot.
You can switch out the shoes,
right? So you don't have to go worry about trying to change shoes, which is
so
really
with the interdimensional guardian figure. Is that the same basic body you were just talking about?
Yeah, except yours is taller.
Oh, okay.
Because you're a tall guy, so this way, if you have any other 6-scale action figures ever coming in, and you put, if you put your figure next to, say, a Doomcock figure, you'll be taller than Doomcock. He might kill you for it because this is a supervillain, but you'll be taller while you're alive. But yeah, and that's
until Harvey gets me anyway.
Exactly, yeah. So we're the giant robots. But that's the idea behind it. So you can pick up the body for $17. You can pick up, a head for this is an unpainted head. It's about $10. Now this is Hot Toys Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's really good. I have one that's over there from Sideshow that was actually sculpted by my friend Trevor, which I really like because it's got a lot of personality to it. But I saw this and I was like, do I want it to match? Because it doesn't quite fall into the same, just the style of the sculpting, the hyper realism that's in this. Like that is very much a sculpture of the character. This is more of an exact copy.
Right. So
for the sake of continuity in the theme, I put that together like that. But yeah, you can make your own combination of things, and go on. If there's a character that you like, go on eBay, do a search for it, do a search for an individual head, do a search for all the parts, do a search for parts that you think you could get by with, and put that together. So you can dress out your shelf any way you want. It doesn't matter, and you can find so many of these things that are they're out of print basically, so they're not going to have the same kind of. You can't just pre-order it, and because once these things sell out, they're done.
They're gone.
They only issue them basically once. Now, in some cases, I'll order a figure, even though it's not necessarily my favorite figure. Like I ordered a Red Vision figure, even though I'm not a huge Vision fan. It's probably going to be my last opportunity to get a Red Vision that looks like the comic book version, because now it's going to be the White Vision. So
right,
or would that be
and
White
Paul Bettany?
Yeah, but he's it's a great looking figure. And if I want to dress it out somewhere, I can definitely put something like that, like a whole Avenger scene going on. But yeah, there's the possibilities for people that want to get into this this hobby. And it's funny because Az and Robert's show, where they would go back and forth doing all the showcases. But you also have some great channels out there like Justin's Collection, Jetta Patrol. These guys just do reviews and news about these different figure releases that are coming out. and you can learn a lot from them. You can really like see what's coming and things. You can get in on some of these just following their Twitter pages and channels on YouTube. You can see what they're putting out, and what kind of upcoming releases they're going to have. And they all have pretty much payment plans that you can do. And there is a downside with the Sideshow payment plan because once you click the payment option, you could pay it off whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But once you click that payment option, no matter how fast you pay it off, you'll get it after everybody else gets theirs. But if you pay for it up front, as soon as they get it in stock, they start shipping it out to you.
Do you mean as opposed to prepaying?
Well, no, yeah. Well, you're basically prepaying anyway. But if I pay for it all in one lump sum, I get it as soon as it is released.
I see. Okay.
If I take the payment plan, I have to wait until everybody else. You're kind of like the last delivery that gets sent out, which kind of stinks. Like, you paid for it, but everybody else is opening theirs up, and you're kind of like, I gotta wait. So, but that's like the.
Actually, I think that happened with me and Phantom Boomer with our Rocinante ships, and what was the other one that we had? The Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, see, there's another example of so far, no third-party company has come out with that, at least not to my knowledge, the revised version of Battlestar Galactica figures. There are some of the classic figures out there in 6 scale of the old Lorne Green and Dirk Benedict and Richard Hatch.
So like these kind of this is an Orville that just came out. These are hand painted, right?
I would imagine, yeah. Like most of these things, like a machine really can't replicate so much. So you'll have somebody come along and like they set them up and they just sit at their little factories and paint them.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable that they do such a good job considering like the conditions they are painted under.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's I'm actually surprised that no one has made an official version of Orville figures, but I'm sure you could probably find someone who has customized them already.
Huh. That's interesting. Maybe they'll make them after the 3rd season, or maybe they're preparing to because they wanted to see, how popular they would be after 3 years of no Orville.
Well, that's the thing. They want to see what kind of legs the franchise has.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hot Toys especially is very picky on what they really go hog wild on. For example, they got burned on the first Ant-Man movie. They never made a Yellow Jacket figure. They made a prototype, but they never set it up for pre-order or released it, which says that they didn't get the numbers back in the pre-orders of the Ant-Man figure that would suggest to them they're going to sell enough to make it profitable. Because they have to set up all the molds and the injection molds to get all that stuff made. So it's an expensive undertaking and it doesn't pan out unless you're going to sell X amount. Like, for example, you can go on Sideshow's site right now and you can still pick up a Captain Marvel figure because, surprise, it didn't sell that well.
Right.
You can still get a Fat Thor figure, but all the other Thor figures are gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny. It's like we get called all these names for liking things the way we like them, but the market actually shows you what you have that sells and what doesn't sell. Nobody wants, like, it might be nice to have, like, your end game Thor on the shelf, but you want a heroic looking Thor on the shelf. you want Chris Hemsworth as muscular as he can possibly look, sitting on that shelf looking like Thor.
With Mjolnir, yeah.
I want to see how long that Jane Foster Thor sits on the Sideshow website without sales. You'll get some people that want to be completists and stuff like that, but I'm betting that you won't see it. Just
Captain Marvel figure void for 40-year-old white men.
But that's, now I guarantee you, if they were to go, good night, Ari. If they were to go and make a traditional Marvel figure, it would probably sell very, very well because there's so many comic book collectors out there.
Oh my gosh, 102 fever and chills.
Oof.
Get yourself into an ice bath, Herc 130. Thanks for being here.
Take care
of yourself.
Lots of vitamin D.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do, is get people to feel encouraged that they can make their own things. They don't have to sit there and, like, for example, like, you don't like the version like I waited for a Spider-Man figure for years. I didn't like the costumes that they put on in the movies. I didn't like the original Tobey Maguire suit was really good, but it still wasn't exactly classic comic book version. The Andrew Garfield one, the first one with the sneakers and like the orange eyes, I didn't care for that one. The second one I actually thought about getting, but he's actually kind of tall to be Spider-Man. And of course the Tom Holland one is like, Iron Spider-Man kind of thing, which I wanted my classic comic book representation, comic accurate representation. So when they came out with this version, which is actually from a video game, I jumped on it. Now, it doesn't come with an unmasked Peter Parker head sculpt, but I did pick up a Tom Holland head sculpt with the mask half on, which I can always pop on that figure if I want to have a Peter Parker.
Hail Adega.
Hail Adega. Published author there. Anti-derivative Jill.
Anti-derivative Jill.
So, yeah, you can put these things together however you like, and that's really the important thing, because that's a way to hold on to your love of that franchise the way you want it to be.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they do. You still have your old video to watch. You still have your old comic books to read, and you can walk in.
DVDs, Blu-rays.
Yep, and you can walk in on your shelf and you can see your representation the way you want it to be.
Right.
And it's the headcanon, right? But that's really all that matters, because that's what counts, the way I want to remember it. I was never a huge EU fan in Star Wars. I read some of the books, but
I'm getting there, but yeah, same with me.
Now, I really like the EU that was published surrounding the prequels, because I think once George Lucas had fleshed out his universe more and really set parameters, I think the stories got better, because the science fiction writers were limited by these parameters, and they had to they couldn't just make up something that would find their way out of a plot. They had to stick with what was established in there, and I thought they made for better stories. Which I have all of the books surrounding the prequel trilogy, and I didn't care for like the new Jedi Order things with the Yuuzhan Vong, like the idea of like, all right, here's this energy field created by all living beings. Well, here's these things from another galaxy. They don't have the Force out there. Well, to me, the Force should be
ridiculous. It binds us, it surrounds us, penetrates us. It's all living things generate the Force.
Right. Now, there's an example of, you could have that debate with somebody and they'll say, it was in an official book, so it counts. Like, but it doesn't logically count. So in my opinion, if it doesn't logically count, then I don't want to be held to it. I'd much rather have my own headcanon, if you will.
We have a question from the chat. Mr. MH says, At Cardinal Sin, does Andy like manga or anime?
It's funny. When I was young, one of my best friends was a huge Star Blazers fan. And for the longest time, I couldn't really get into anime. But my son he's not huge on anime, but he's immersed in it a little bit. He's got these certain movies like Weathering with You and Silent Voice, which are friggin' amazing visually to look at, and the stories are really poignant and a little kind of emotional. It's like, wow, really took me by surprise, the depth of the storytelling of that. So, and very, very creative as well. Since then, over the last year or two, I've really gotten into. My son and I will take turns. Like, we watch one of my movies or TV shows, then we'll watch one of his movies and TV shows, and then we kind of pair off on that. So it's really a neat experience. Like, when you get to sit down with your son, who can introduce you to a whole new thing. Like, you spent his young life introducing him to all the stuff that you loved and he appreciates, and now he gets to return the favor, which is a really neat experience. We just last week I had him watch the original Top Gun, and Friday we went to see the sequel. And he walks out of the theater. He's 22, and I said to him, like, well, what'd you think? And he says, God damn, that's how you do a sequel. It was like, it had just the right amount of callback to the original, but a great story and a lot of fun. Back in the old days when, like, you made a movie to have fun, it was great. So so that's I do appreciate a lot of the anime. A lot of my stuff is stuff that I grew up with. It's like, things were kind of formative for me. Like, I started collecting comic books at like 7 or 8 years old. Star Wars, I was 10 years old when that came out. Well, actually, just about to turn 10. I was like 9, and just short of a couple weeks short of 10 years old. And man, what a great time to grow up with Star Wars. Every kid in the neighborhood was picking up every piece of wood and having a lightsaber. Because there was nothing out there that you could buy that you could that would be your.
I seem to recall some of the action figures had like a thing where you could move it up and down.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you about now that we've sort of hopefully broken people out so that they're willing to give it a try themselves. I wanted to talk about display options, specifically about Detolf shelves, and what are Modu cases?
Okay, so the Detolf shelving, they're shelving units sold by IKEA. They're all glass, and they're pretty easy to put together. The only downside I've seen is people in California have had earthquakes, and there are weight limits. If you put something too heavy, it can shatter. Now, the Modu cases are from Sideshow. They are 40 inches wide, 17 inches tall, and they have lighting inside them, and they're stackable. So you can put these up and you can put them next to each other, and you can really dress out a display around them with internal lighting. It really makes for a very professional looking setup, and it's quite impressive. So they're about $230 a piece. So now I like the freedom of like building my own things. Like I've got some things here. I got this one here. I have another one I'm setting up on the other side of the room that's going to be for my Marvel Supernatural figures. It's going to be Doctor Strange, Ancient One. I'm kit bashing right now a Baron Mordo figure. I took a Joaquin Phoenix Joker sculpt and black hair, black goatee. I sculpted onto him. So he's going to be comic book Baron Mordo.
Oh, interesting.
Ghost Rider. I just picked up Thunder Toys is another third-party company. They just made a Sam Elliott Cowboy Ghost Rider figure from the Johnny Blaze movie, which was actually a Marvel comic book character from way back when.
Ghost Rider?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the first Ghost Rider movie.
Yeah, I mean it was great.
With Peter Fonda as the devil, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Although I have to admit, like, my favorite representation of the devil on screen had to be in Constantine.
That was great.
Oh yeah, he just oozing like sinister.
That was a role that was made for him.
Yeah, and Al Pacino in with Keanu Reeves.
It was the perfect sort of mentor, relationship.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, you can find versions of these things, like, and people can say like, well, like I made a my father fought in World War II, and growing up, Captain America was my favorite superhero. Fought in World War II. My father and I would sit down. We would watch the PBS specials about World War II.
Didn't it used to be back in the day? I mean, way back. Didn't it used to be Nick Fury and his Howlin' Commandos?
Yeah, 1964, I believe that came out. And see that there's an example of Marvel. When they come along and they want to make Marvel diverse, you had Sergeant Fury and his Howlin' Commandos, who featured a Nick Fury, New York Hell's Kitchen guy. You had forget his name, Izzy something. He was a Jewish soldier. You had an Italian soldier, Dino Manelli, who was based off Dean Martin. You had a redneck soldier, and you had Gabe Jones, a black character in a prominent Marvel comic book. So, like, talk about diversity. It was like, it was already there in Marvel Comics. You didn't need to manufacture it. And, oddly enough, diversity looks an awful lot like free market capitalism, because you're trying to capture as many sales as you can. So you want to appeal to as many people as you can.
Sure.
But, and this is where
even going so far as to licensing Fu Manchu for the comics.
Right.
I mean, that wasn't cheap.
Yeah. And I mean, and they've done, they did Conan, they did Tarzan, they did but these are all things that people have.
Solomon Kane.
Yeah. People have like immersed themselves into these things, and they want something that they can hold that takes them back a little bit. And you pick up an action figure, and I tried this when my kids were little. I really tried my best to summon my inner child and play with them, but it was gone.
Yeah,
I didn't have that ability to immerse myself in it anymore, and it was kind of sad. But I would get a huge amount of joy watching my kids sit down and play with these things. And anything I could do to add to that. Now, I can pick up one of these action figures, and it takes me back a little bit to those times, that a more innocent time when, like, there I was, like, the nerdy kid with thick glasses that was allergic to everything and was terrible at sports because I could barely see stuff. And I could go into my bedroom and I had all my toys there that were non-judgmental.
Right.
And these are
I had a very similar experience. I got beat up at school when I was a kid because my brother was kind of a bully, according to my parents, and they just didn't want me to end up being a bully because we were both big for our age. And so I ended up having kids half my size wailing on me, and I just got to a point where, I'd had enough. So I bopped this guy like an uppercut, and it lifted him off of the ground, and he fell down, and then he wanted to be my friend.
Yeah. Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
it's pretty weird.
yeah, that's the I mean, look, everything that I do in my life is all about trying to get people to achieve their potential, to encourage people. I see so many people that hold themselves back, in all walks of life, in professionalism, in hobbies, in all of these different areas. They hold themselves back, and don't do that. Life is too short.
Yeah.
Enjoy the things that you like. You know, it's it's bad enough that, like, we see these people coming along and they think they're going to improve on things like Star Wars and Star Trek and Marvel Comics. Like,
And Doctor Who, when they've
there
never watched it.
there's a line from Tom Horn with Steve McQueen. Tom Horn was he was a bounty hunter back in the Old West, and he had actually been in a guide and a scout, and he knew Geronimo. And someone said something about Geronimo once, and Tom Horn said, "Old Geronimo was so great a man, you'd have to climb up a stepladder just to kiss his ass." And that's how I feel about, Stan Lee's and Jack Kirby's and and Roy Thomas and John Byrne and all these guys that made such classic comic books with reverence to the source material. And when I see these idiots come along and they're like, "I'm going to make it better," like, no, you're not. You can't even make a decent bowel movement, for God's sake. You're like, you have zero creativity inside you because all of your ideas have been pumped into you by someone who feels that there's victimization everywhere. And, like, you know what? The world is full of people that are just trying to get through their day.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah, you know what? They're going to cut you off sometimes. They're going to step on your toe. And nobody's going to bend over and hand over their job to you because, you're more deserving of it. Life is messy and it's dirty. And, everybody.
And it's a meritocracy.
Exactly. So you know how you get better? You sit down, and I learned how to sew because my daughter wanted clothes for her American Girl doll. And I'm looking at this stuff, and it was like a couple pieces of fabric. I'm like, I can figure out how to do
hard can this be? Yeah.
Right. So I took things apart, learned how to put them together, bought a sewing machine, and I don't do a great job.
You do very good work.
Well, when you see, like, tailoring that's on, like this, I mean, this is just absolutely frightening, and like the layering and stuff that it goes into the Captain America costume.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's like, I mean, holy crap, that's impressive. But yeah, I want people to give this stuff a shot. I'd like people to, like, you know what, by all means, go out and buy a Hot Toys figure, but try building a background for it.
Right.
Print out a photo of something that you can stick behind it, and then see if you can build something. Like, you know what, get some Sculpey clay and start making yourself some bricks and stack them on top of each other. Make some get some rocks and glue them together, and with some clay or something like that, or some concrete, and make it look like a mountainside that you can have, like, your figure standing on.
Right.
Things like that. Like, you can get, like, there are Conan figures out there. There are Witcher figures out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can get these and you can jazz up these things, but be creative. Look at something and see if you can replicate it.
I really like Darius Munchausen's comment, "Get out of your own way."
Exactly. Yeah. And, well, a lot of people are afraid of their own success. Like, they're comfortable where they're at. And if they move up, now it's a whole different set of rules. It's a whole different, but look, you will never be happier until you sit back and you can look at something you've actually made yourself. It might not be the best, but you made it. And you can get better at it. Don't quit. Whatever you do, don't quit. And my friend Tom, that we're doing this diorama. We were having a hell of a time making these bar stools for this bar scene that he's doing for Final Fantasy VII. And so we came up with the first idea. It didn't work. Came up with the second idea. That didn't work. Came up with the idea of making a jig for it to put it in there so it holds it in place. Didn't quite work. So then I tweaked it a little bit. Now I got a perfect jig for it. Now I got to get a friend of mine to weld it, which will be a little bit challenging. And then I'm going to learn how to weld myself, so I can just tack them on there. And once that's done, but that's the process. Somebody makes something. You're like, wow, I never thought of that. I'm going to do something like that, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. Then somebody else sees your version, and they're going to tweak it. And the next thing you know, it becomes this spiral where everybody's improving because somebody else gave them an idea to make it a little bit better.
I wanted to kind of share this because I've often not been the only person to say this, but others, like I said before, have said that maybe you missed your calling. You should be doing head sculpts for Hot Toys. And then I found this on Etsy, and you've got people here that are making their own action figures and selling them.
Yeah.
She looks like an actress, actually, and it looks like she's holding the action figure. But there are all kinds of stuff on Etsy for action figures. That one's $15, looks like. Custom 3D portrait painting statue doll from Photo. Personalized figurine gifts for girlfriend, her, him, wife, women, daughter, mother, birthday. I'm sure
that's
YouTube is going to get me for saying any of those. But it's definitely something that people are doing. Now, this one's $300, but... they're
3D printed.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. You can. There are companies out there that you can... there's a couple of them. There's one in Philadelphia. You can go over and... so I'm sure every major city probably has one. You sit in this chair, and it takes a photo, a panoramic photo of you. Mm-hmm. The camera goes around, and it 3D prints a head sculpt for you.
Like when you go to the dentist and you get that 3D X-ray?
Yeah, basically, yeah. And so you sit in this thing, and some of them, they do it from photos. You can send them a couple of photos, and they'll make an approximation of it, and you can buy them relatively cheap. Now, like what I did when I made the Doomcock figure, that was the first one of these I did. I was just a guy. I had some extra time in my hands because of the whole lockdown thing. I didn't have as many people coming out to classes and stuff, so it was like, all right, I have extra time. And guys like Doomcock were talking about how much they loved action figures, and I was like, you know what? I was being very cautious because I had no idea how long the lockdowns were going to last, and that's my income. The assistance that they offered me was like, oh, we can offer you a loan. So you want me to take out a loan and put myself in debt, but you're not allowing me to make any money. So how am I supposed to pay the loan back?
Right.
So that wasn't an option for me. So I was being very frugal with how I was spending my money. So I wasn't super chatting or anything. I had no idea. It took me the longest time to even realize there was a super chat going on the side.
Right.
I thought YouTube was for how do I change the hose, the pump in my dishwasher,
right,
or music. I had no idea this stuff existed. So when I heard these guys talking about action figures, that would be a cool action figure to make, the mask and everything like that. And then little by little, I thought about this. I could do it like this. I don't like that idea. I could do it like this. And then finally I got the idea of how to put it all together, made it, and I sent it off. And I had no inkling that these kinds of things were going to happen, that guys like yourself are going to like, hey, please come on and talk to people about this kind of thing. Like, and just the ability to share these things with people, to get the idea out there that like you don't have to just accept what's offered to you. There's so many possibilities out there. You can buy third-party figures. You could buy, you could build stuff. You could sculpt your own things. I have a friend of mine. I just bought for him. I got to mail them off to him. Sculpting tools because he's going to give it a shot. He's gonna try and work at it. I turn the camera on when I'm sculpting to let people see how I'm doing it. And I'm all self-taught. There's professionals out there who do the same thing that you're going to pick up a lot more pointers from. But just try it. That's the thing. Just try it. You'll never know what you're capable of until you give it a shot.
So Andy, what's your best advice for people to dip a toe, let's say, into custom making, like we talked about, dioramas, backgrounds, figures, just to get started? Where should people look? Are there websites? Are there stores that you would recommend?
You can go on. There's all kinds of social media groups. A lot of the forum internet sites have kind of gone by the wayside. Most people aren't really using them they still have some people that go on them, but for the most part, like, I think social media has kind of like taken over for that. But look around, just like do searches.
Now, like earlier, you mentioned like that $17 regular body.
Yeah.
Where would you get one of those?
Okay, so you could put there's stores out there like there's Giant Toy, there is Toys Wonderland, Big Bad Toy Store, eBay. eBay is a good place to start for a lot of things, but whatever you do your homework on eBay. Don't just order the first thing that you see, because chances are you'll find the exact same thing cheaper because there's multiple sellers that put things out there. They highball a price and they lowball a price. Mm-hmm. And if you just happen to click on the first one you see, they could get you for the higher price. So look around, save it as a search, and then just keep looking around, and you might find a better price on something, or even a better quality version of something. But you can start with eBay. You can start with some of these other. Just go on a Google search and say, 1/6 scale bodies for sale, and start looking at sites like TNS Toys, 1/6 Kit, K&G Hobby. They all sell all these different figures, and you will see franchises and properties, intellectual properties, that you had no idea that they had figures for. My friend Tom, he's a big video game guy. He's bought, the Resident Evil figures. He's bought Final Fantasy figures. He's bought some of the samurai figures that they've created. My God, there are companies in Japan that make these incredibly detailed samurai figures with real metal blades, and they're astonishing. Wow. Absolutely beautiful showpieces of
So
work.
What if we wanted to get started locally? Where are some of the chain hobby stores that you'd recommend?
You're not going to find anything like this in a chain hobby. You might, if you go to a comic book shop, you'll probably see some Sideshow Toys out there, and I highly recommend people go look at these things. And if you go somewhere where you can actually hold one, it's even more
compelling.
More impressive. Yeah, because you look at these things and people are like, holy shit, because the first thing you say to people is you action figures, they picture G.I. Joe and Barbies,
right?
But then you show this to them, oh my God, that's amazing, and they'll sit there and they're just staring at these things. So it's really an internet game at this point. Like, yeah, go out to the comic book shop and check things out, see what they have to offer, and see if you can hold them, see if you can actually look at these things, see them up close, because the pictures online really do not do them justice. But then look at some of the third-party figures as well, because they're really impressive also. You'll find some great talent out there, and you'll be able to make your own displays. And people talk about having their man caves and stuff like that and all. You could dress these things out and have your own little paradise out there. It's really up to the individual as far as your taste and how you want it to be. But look at things like, look at a Star Trek corridor. I mean, if you think about those old sets from the 60s, they wouldn't be that hard to replicate, because they're pretty plain. There's not a whole lot of real fancy stuff there. You could also get very techy. You could get like little gribblies and stuff like that, and put them all together, and like get a piece of this, cut them up, and glue them upside down and backwards and stuff. Like,
do they still sell fiber optic lights that you can put for interior lighting for a starship?
They have those, and they have LEDs that you can put in there that are like just and LEDs are so cheap now. Like these diorama bases, I put some lights in here the other day that are $5 at Walmart for a 20-foot strip, and you can change them. You can put them. They have the different effects and stuff like that you can put on there. I have this stuff called EL wire. I don't know if you can see here. There's my button. Okay, so I got a light. Probably can't see with the chromium, but I made a neon sign that says beer and wine for the little building on the bottom. So that lights up, and you can do things like that. There's so many. We have guys in our sphere here, like Mark S47, who's you'll see him pop up in all these chats. When I did the Mexican Iron Man figure for him, I popped the thing apart and I knocked the wire off. Well, Mark does electronics, and we'd been talking, so I sent this thing down to him, and I sent the base back with him. He hooked the base up with this soundboard where it's got 4 buttons on there, and each button has different things that Mikey says, like, ooh, I'm getting excited, like, and all these goofy Mikeyisms that has. And he's got this magnetic switch. You pull a magnet across the front, and it's got Doomcock singing like like. There's again somebody like that who could set you up with, like, all right, I'm going to build a display diorama. You email Mark, and he's going to put things on there like, all right, here's this stuff that we can put in there. Your sound effects that you can have for your own display diorama that'll be exclusively yours. It'll be uniquely your own kind of thing. So, yeah, that's my my proposal to people, to really get yourself to a point where you are making things the way you like them.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, these are shirts that I made with the help of, in this case, Douglas Nelson.
There you go.
For the Masters of the Genre. And of course, there's the Fet for Hire design of Masters of the Genre. And this is the shirt that we are giving away tonight. So I thought that I would at least let people know what is on offer. And according to Anti-Derivative Jill, giveaway entrants are now closed. So we'll give her a little time to get that wheel rolling. And as we wrap up here, Andy, first of all, I wanted to say what a fantastic show. It's been what a wonderful guest you are. How talented you are. Were you involved with the creation of the Doomcock rings?
No, not at all. That's all Gary.
That's all Gary. Okay,
Yeah.
not the Doom cock rings. The Doomcock rings.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm for people that like what you do, but there seems to be some hesitance, let's say, on the part of people to go ahead and try something, to break out of that, oh, I can't do that. That's too, he's amazing. I'll never be able to do that. To tap that creativity, to get somebody to go ahead and try something. What is your best advice in sort of a sound bite, if you could?
Don't be afraid to fail. Accept in the beginning that the first stuff you do is going to look like crap. So what? Everybody's first time looks like crap. Don't be afraid to fail. Pick up a paintbrush, try things out. Pick up some wood, some glue. Styrene plastic is like, you can buy sheets of this stuff at a hobby store or on Amazon. You cut it up, you buy the cement, you glue it together. Some spray paint, or the cheap paint you can buy at Walmart for 50 cents for a little bottle. Yeah, you get out there and you give it a shot. And the next time you do it, it'll get better. And then go on YouTube and look for pointers. You know what? I didn't like the way that one came out. Let me see what somebody else has to say. And make your own video. Make it like a challenge out there of like, here's my progression. Here's my journey. Here's where I started. I don't look at myself as that good. I've had a lot of people very graciously tell me how much they love the work I've done, and I truly, truly appreciate it. I hold my stuff up next to Hot Toys figure, and I'm like, ooh, wow, I'm very amateur with this.
Got a ways to go.
But you know what? I keep cracking away at it. I'm like, little more effort, and I try it out. And I've had people look at my stuff and tell me it's awful. Okay, that's all right. And I don't think it's awful, but it's definitely going to get better.
Yeah.
But don't take people's criticisms. There's an old saying that if you let praise go to your head, you'll let criticism go to your heart. So don't do either one. Just don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
You know what? Every single person, there's probably somebody out there who started off and they just did amazing things. When I was in high school, I did commercial art classes my junior and senior year. There were 3 period blocks for 2 years that I did. And I was good at everything, but not great at anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start off even good, but I kept working at things until I got better and better and better.
Right.
And I wanted to make things in different, I wanted to make things in different mediums. I wanted to paint. I wanted to sculpt. I actually got into sculpting probably about in the mid 90s. The first thing I ever sculpted was a Spawn figure that eventually bit the dust. But I kept trying things, so I was pretty good at everything. But there was a girl in my art class she just thought she was the best at everything. Mm-hmm. She was walking around and she was
too cool for school.
Yeah, and then one time we had an art contest, that was judged by all 3 of the art teachers in the school and went out regionally wide and stuff like that, and I won. And so the teacher was announcing the winners and stuff like that, and she's like, I came in first, she came in second. and which I didn't go around gloating or anything. I was just like, wow, thanks. It's like, she said, well, there was a tie, and this girl, oh, what was the tie in? Like, relax. It was for honorable mentions. Like, and she's all depressed like that. Like, you know what? So what? Like, unless you have the humility, you're never going to get better.
Yeah.
If you think that you're already at the top, then why bother? Because you're not going to get any better.
Yep.
But if you think to yourself, like, you know what? Journey of 1,000 miles,
plugging away.
A single step, but take the second step.
Yeah.
It's just like fitness. It's just like, you got to get up and you got to take that first step, but then you got to take the second step. And it's going to be hard, and sometimes it's going to suck, and sometimes you're going to fall. So what?
Yep.
Try it. Don't be afraid to fail.
And like, in basketball, they say you miss all the shots you don't take.
Mm-hmm.
In martial arts, if you don't know you're going to fall, how can you learn how to fall correctly?
Yeah.
It's all sort of the same sort of ethos.
My old job, I was a grocery manager, and we had a district manager come in one time, and he said, you look at an empty shelf, and some people will say, how many you sold. But the smart guy is going to look at the empty shelf and say, how many more could you have sold? So, and that's the key to it. It's like, you have to be willing to say, like, you know what? I can make more. I can sell more of that. I can, like, don't be happy with just like, it's like, the biblical story of, like, the guy that buried the talents in the ground. Wow. Look, you didn't lose anything. Yeah, but you didn't get anything either. Take a chance. That's what life's for.
Absolutely. And with that, I would like to welcome Darius Munchausen.
How are you, gentlemen?
Good. You sound a little robot-y.
Thank you for your cooperation.
You have 10 seconds to comply. How you been, Darius?
Yeah, doing okay. Here, I turned it off. Sound better now?
Now you sound better, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with that thing. But it comes on every time I reboot, so. I'm just enjoying the show.
Yeah. Pretty good show tonight.
I'm very inspired by Andy.
As are, I think, we all.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't see myself as, like, anything special, and which is why I tell people, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. It's like, and there are people out there that, like, are they sculpt, and they might make, like, an alien, a Star Wars alien, and it might look awful, but you know what? It might not be too bad.
And it can only get better.
Right.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring on the wheel so we can see who's going to win tonight's prize, which is a Masters of the Genre t-shirt. And if you would like, Darius, you can go ahead and give that one a spin.
Are you ready?
We're ready. Wow.
Whoa. Congratulations, Canadian Spider-Man.
Congratulations.
Just whatever
Nicely
Spider-Man
done.
can, eh?
Hey, yeah. Good job.
All right.
Well, I have his information, so I'll make sure and get that stuff. He says, I'm pink now.
Ooh,
And congratulations, of course. Very good. Well, Darius, thanks so much for helping with that. And Jill, and congratulations to Canadian Spider-Man. I learned a lot tonight, Andy. And you have given me the feeling that I can do stuff myself. That I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna get up. And, take that second step, like you said, and keep trying. And I'll get better and better and better. And great thanks to you for doing the show tonight and showing us how that can be done. That if you want to get to the top of the stairs, you got to take that first stair and the second stair. And I've always believed, my personal philosophy is that if there's something that you can, like for instance, being a drummer. The first time I sat down at a drum set, I was embarrassed, obviously. Second time, not so much. Third time, not so much. And that's a really long staircase. But one thing I did notice that I think you might understand is when I got to a certain level that I recognized, I'm okay. I'm a fairly good drummer. I just got over the part of the hill where I could see how much more hill there was,
Yeah.
So I don't know if you would, agree with that sort of mentality.
Yep.
But it does have a lot to do with that humility that you were talking about. If you want to see how good you can be, you got to start somewhere. Like, I've been a drummer for most of my life, and I had an electric guitar that I would just kind of dink around on, and I would just use it to show the actual guitarist in whatever band I happened to be in how the song that I was writing goes, and then he would, play it like it actually goes. And then I bought a guitar because I wanted to see how good I could be, and I'm taking lessons, and I'm getting better, and it's sticking, which is, something that you experience when you practice and practice and practice, and you'll get better and better and better. So I think there's a lot to be said for your ethos of, start off with being humble and try what you're interested in, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's twofold with this. Your collection should bring you happiness. It's like everybody that likes these properties, these intellectual properties, you can watch the movies over and over. I've never met anybody that was a fan of these things. Like, you go to conventions, everybody's buying something, everybody's picking something up. They're like, wow, I got to have this. This is so cool. And when you get a bunch of nerdy guys together, like, oh, did you see this? Like, whoa, that's awesome. It's like, you can sit down and you can hold these things. You can, like, you're not going to play with them. You're not going to but you put them in poses, you do these things. And there's also videos out there about how to properly pose figures to really make dynamic poses, which is really an art unto itself. But you can do all that. And like, all right, so yeah, you buy this, but it's just going to sit there like a statue. Do something with it. Make a background for it, and then pose your figure inside of it.
Right.
Get another guy and have, get the Darth Maul to go with Qui-Gon, and maybe this time Qui-Gon won. Maybe you can pick up, like, you can kit bash something. You find some dark robes and stuff like that. Maybe this was the Sith Lord that Qui-Gon killed, before he ever met Darth Maul.
Sure, that's exactly the kind of thing that we used to do when I collected Star Wars figures when I was in junior high school.
Yeah. So make your stuff things that are going to make you happy. Life sucks enough as it is. There's enough bad news. You should be able to walk into a room somewhere, take a look around at your stuff, and make a couple adjustments and feel good. Pop in an old movie and when they were good and watch it.
I did that just last night and the night before. All right. Well, again, Andy, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
wonderful having you on. I look forward to the next time we can do that. And Darius, thanks for helping us with the wheel, and congratulations to Canadian Spider-Man for winning that t-shirt. And for everyone I just mentioned, it's Cardinal Sin out.